Hey everybody, this is Christina Williams with Just Criminal Law. It's all we do. Today we're going to talk about false confessions, and I have David Mann along with me for the discussion. Hi, David.
Hi there, Christina. I have been helping you guys for a year or so on getting case stories to be resonant with the juries and judges. So, false confessions. We've seen a lot of those on TV shows where the cop is always getting kind of violent and making somebody confess to something. But what is the reality of all that?
The reality is you're not going to see the violence that you do in the TV dramas anymore, more than likely. But what you do see is dishonest tactics used to get someone to say they did something they didn't do.
Yeah, always seems so weird that someone's going to confess to something they didn't do. But their studies show that people can get worn down or sort of manipulated to the point where they are going to actually do that. And this can have really serious consequences for people, right?
Absolutely. It's, catastrophic to a case when someone says they did it, but they didn't. And that happens for lots of reasons. It changes the way the police investigate the crime. It changes the way the judge or the jury hear the case. It's really, really hard to back out of a confession.
Yeah, people want to believe, if someone, the jury sees that someone says they did it, they want to believe that that's real. So I know that this has actually happened, in your experience, you've seen this happening. Do you have a good example of this happening?
Well, I've seen it happen to clients of mine in cases that we've had. And right now I'm reading a really, really, really good book. It's Duped: Why Innocent People Confess and Why We Believe Their Confessions. It's by Saul Kassan, and he's the nation's leading expert in false confessions. And he talks about some really, really good examples in his book.
So what's one of those that you can remember that sort of depicts how this goes?
Well, one in particular involved a juvenile, and juveniles are just a very vulnerable population when it comes to meeting with the police and, essentially acquiescing in what the police say they did. But this particular young man, it was his first day of his senior year of high school, and he wakes up to all the lights on in the house and goes to his parents' bedroom and finds his mother dead in bed, and then goes down to the office, the study in the home, and finds his father almost dead, gurgling blood, and immediately calls 911.
Wow. Oh my, I can hardly imagine what he must have been feeling at that point. So he calls 911, meaning now he's going to be having police around, and then what happens?
Well, the police show up, he calls, and he's just frantic. You hear that in his voice in the 911 call. And the police show up and feel like he's not acting appropriate. He should be more upset than he is. And so they take him to the station, and the ambulance takes his parents to the hospital.
Okay, so they've gone to the hospital, and I'm sure this kid is just, despondent at this point. But then we're talking about false confessions. So how does this end up coming back to some kind of false confession?
This is your typical long interrogation. This poor kid is being questioned by the police for 6 long hours, and he's denying it time after time, telling the same story about what happened the night before, the morning of the incident. And, the police are wanting to get the confession out of him. So they start feeding him false information.
Really? So what kind of false information are they able to feed him?
They tell him that his hair is found in his mother's grasp, and that, that there's so much humidity in the house. He must have showered off the blood before he called 911. They're telling him you had, the house humidity was high. We actually have your hair in your mom's grasp. And then the fact that they fed him that was false, that tipped the scale, was he said they faked a phone call from the hospital and said, Well, we have good news and we have bad news. The good news is your dad's still alive. The bad news is he's named you as his attempted killer.
At this point, the kid's only access to the information that they're telling him is them. He didn't hear his father say this. He didn't see the hair from his supposedly his mother had in her grasp. But he has to believe what the police tell him, right?
Well, he doesn't know that the police can lie, and he's assuming what they're saying is true.
So the father, according to the police, the father said that his son committed these murders. And then what happened to the son?
Well, the son, the cop said a lot of times people black out during this kind of thing. Is it possible that you blacked out and you don't remember? And he starts to believe, well, maybe, my dad says I did it. That must be what happened. So he says he did it.
Wow. That is just amazing that he goes from finding his parents murdered to actually confessing to murdering them when he didn't do it. And that, I imagine he went to jail for a long time then, right?
He was sentenced to, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced, to spend his life in prison. But for this guilty witness coming forward and saying he did it on his deathbed, Mr. Tancliffe would not have been exonerated. He would have spent his life in jail. So yes, he gets out. Kind of the positive twist on this particular false confession is he goes to law school, he becomes a lawyer, and is actually helping defend people and helping innocent people get out of jail.
That is incredible. That is an incredible story. So at any point along the line here, someone in that situation needs a really sharp lawyer who's going to understand what's really going on and help them get the best possible outcome under those circumstances. So having talked to you here, it sounds like you know about this. And how does someone get a hold of you if they want to bring you on?
Well, first of all, I want to remind people the importance of not talking to the police, right? That's going to be like the lesson that comes out of this video. Don't talk to the police, get a lawyer, and you can get a hold of us by clicking the link in the description. Then you can call, text, or visit with a member of my team anytime, day or night.